So in 2011, I experienced a near fatal fall where I fell 54 feet, 5 stories from a building top in the Pacific Heights district of San Francisco. The injuries that took place were a fractured tibia and fibula, a completely shattered pelvis, a punctured lung, severed kidney, 67 fractures in my face alone, and what's remarkable, because I'm gorgeous, right? So it's like you have that issue. But the greatest of all the injuries was the traumatic brain injury. They had to do a craniectomy and then eventually a cranioplasty by the absolute gift of God, that I managed to still be here, considering just the fall in its own. I remember my physiatrist, he came in and he's like looking at my chart and he started laughing. He's like, 9 out of 10 times when anything like this happens, it's a dead person that would be in front of me. And the only reason why I can say 9 is because you're the one that made it. Like he was very candid in our conversation.
I thought maybe we could start with you telling us, if people know you from like The Biggest Loser, what I saw was, oh, here's someone who just completely transformed his body and his life. And I want us to go back to that time and sort of you take us back there. Like what was going on in your life before that, and kind of led you to the decision to try and be on that show.
To even participate.
Yeah.
I mean, it's wild because it's now like 15 years, I think, since that happened, right? And a lot can happen in 15 years. And it's pretty wild to even consider that, roughly 15 years ago, that kind of journey that changed my life, transformed my life forever. It was the first time I ever looked at health, or even considered working out in a way that builds and like the benefits of it, other than the vanity, right, of like trying to look good in the mirror or whatever it may be,
or for the purpose of sports too.
Yeah, right, like, exactly, for the purpose of like strength for the sports, and because it was I played football then at that time, and through high school and then a little bit in junior college, and so everything that was associated with weightlifting was geared towards for the purpose of beating an opponent.
Performance.
Yeah.
Performance. Yeah. Not necessarily for health. I'm just saying that because I think we both come from the same, you know what I mean? That same idea that he even said that 23, it was age 23. So me too. Like we didn't discover like this whole idea of eating for your health. I mean, until later, not even at a young age, so I just thought that was interesting because I shared the same thing, Sam.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Was that similar in your household, that like health wasn't even, it's like Poe shared, really like it was almost survival mode, right? There were so many other considerations about just providing for the family and getting like everything else managed. Health wasn't really a consideration. Was that true for you too?
Yeah, I mean, and even to this day, really, I mean, and I say that just humbly speaking, like I don't think enough corrective things have taken place to understand, like, just, I don't know, maybe the finite number of days that we're here, and that truly nothing's ever really addressed until someone has a diagnosis, or, it's that tertiary response, right? It's like, it's not proactive, but it's reactive, and I think, it's like, oh, you have gout now, or, oh, you have hypertension, these other ailments that are, due to whether it's sedentary lifestyle or just lifestyle in general, and I think, then the response takes place, then where you do what you can to address that moment, because, well, now these finite number of days that we're here are slowly, that window's like you can feel that closure, that mortality, right? And that's just kind of the way I think of things at times, right? And so,
are you saying, Sam? Are you saying that that's the way health is approached within your community, within your family?
I think a lot of times, yes,
I see.
for
Yeah.
sure. Instead of being proactive, it's very reactive.
Hmm.
Or even preventative. That's the other thing.
Yeah,
Preventative thinking.
preventative
Yeah.
medicine, right? There's
Yeah. I don't think that's something that's common, you know.
like getting up and going for walks, or doing some sort of physical activity.
Hmm.
I remember in class we watched this 23 and a half hours video that was brilliantly done and talking about how just a half hour a day, the best medicine that you can do to fight depression, various ailments, just getting out and just by the lowest low impact, just walking,
Hmm.
and getting up and just doing some sort of physical activity, and how it just how the brain, is and how it works out that way. Getting
It,
this, getting blood circulated, and you know,
at some point, you decided, and you can share what that experience was like. You decided to go right to a casting call or some apply for the
yeah,
show. But what before you get into that specifically, like what was the thought? Like what was the inspiration for that?
the the impetus or
Yeah, the
catalyst.
impetus. Yeah.
I would say, one, I remember like I had never seen the show before, and it was popular in that time, like
Right.
2007.
That was like the height
And
of it.
yeah, it
Yeah.
was like, it was peaked up, it's like, because it never interested me. Like, and reality TV for me is always kind of, I think the kids say today, cringe. So, it kind of had that element to it. I was like, I don't even, like, how real is this? Anyway, um, I remember there was a point in being at a gym in Fifth Street. I remember just trying to like work out, and I remember our cousin Coley stopping by. Informing me of an open casting about the show.
Hmm.
He had seen the show because he was inspired by, he enjoyed watching it because there was two Tongan contestants that were currently on the show at that time that he was telling me about
Hmm.
it. And it's like, man, I think it'd be cool, and the season that they're casting is couples, so I was like, well, we're not a couple, you know what I mean? Like you're my boy. He's like, what are you talking about here, man? He's like, no, they're like family couples, like, relationships and
Siblings, things like
yeah,
that. Yeah.
siblings, yeah, cousins, obviously. And so that's kind of how that became our, that our route. And because we were bouncers, right? So everything, like Poe
Yeah.
knows, everything we did was size conducive. Oh, big guy, stand in front of the door, watch IDs, make sure people that are in here are allowed to be in here, and if they're not, send them away. And if it gets rowdy inside, get the rowdiness out of here. Just, I mean, that's really simplifying a
Hmm.
bouncer's job. That was a simple ass job to do. So, if we're being honest about it. So I think that, yeah, that's what we all had done. You know,
Well, it sounds like Coley was inspired by the two Tongan contestants.
yeah, their names were Sione and Felipe.
Okay, and
Um,
they
I
probably had really big transformations as well.
incredible transformations. So in the show, they do this thing called the makeover episode, and
Uh
if
huh.
you're lucky enough to still be on the show when that theme
That's when
thematically
they buy you
that
new
they're on,
clothes and you get a
yeah,
haircut,
exactly,
and
yeah,
yeah,
you get the
that's
new look,
that's a cool
and your
episode.
family gets to see you for the
That's right.
first time, since you've been sequestered in Calabasas, or wherever, yeah, it was Calabasas, and somewhere in LA County. Um, it's the first time the family gets to see you. And I think, there was a moment where I think it was Felipe's wife, sees him for the first time. And it's a very genuine, almost like cinematic, love, everything. And I think Coley saw that and was like, I want that in my life.
Hmm.
You know, I want to do, I want to be a part of that experience and do, kind of make these things happen that,
Hmm.
and take these steps to make that happen,
And what was your
Um,
reaction when he came up to you in the gym and said, "Let's do this"?
man, immediately I think I laughed. You know, I audibly laughed. And I remember I think thinking in my head, and I was like, man, that show about those fat crybabies, like, you know what I mean? Like, man, you know. Anyway,
Okay. And yet, and then you came around to the idea.
yeah, and then I became a fat crybaby myself. So, you know, but no, but even so after that, he was like, you know, hey man, you know, there's a open casting call in San Jose, you know, which is, you know, in San from where I'm being in Santa Rosa, it's roughly, I don't know, like
An
2 hours from here. You
hour
know,
and a
it's
half, two
deep in the
hours.
South
Yeah.
Bay. Yeah, hour and a half, 2 hours easily. You know,
Yeah, that's right.
but it was. So I said, you know, and at that time, and just kind of like my spirit, I'm a very like ride or die type of person, you know, and I could, you know, I felt right that this is something that he genuinely wanted because this is a vulnerable moment, right? To like confide with someone, you know,
Right.
confide with me
Right.
that this is something that, you know, I was like, damn. And I think it resonated with me like, okay, well, if this is serious enough for you to even tell me about it, like, why not give it a shot? You know, take the risk, man. High reward, big risk, high reward. So let's go after it. And, you know, our journey to San Jose, whatever weekend that was, you know, took place. And I
So,
went.
so you really weren't even in the space at that time of this when Coley approaches you about this. I can only imagine how you were like totally caught you off guard. Weren't really thinking about anything like that. Yeah.
Man, I was 21 years old. You know what I mean? Like 22 years old.
Yeah, I could
Thinking
see
like
that.
I was, you know, like partying all the time, going out having fun, and you know,
Yeah, because like
various.
what I wanted to ask was, where if you were to timestamp this part of your life in regards to your relationship with health, where were you with health at this point
Oh,
in your life?
that's a great question. I think aware of that I needed to lose weight,
Well, you were at the
but
gym, right? You were on the elliptical.
yeah, I was at the gym. I was but unfamiliar with the science behind it. You know,
Yeah.
anything of that regard. It's not like I hadn't gotten a physical or any blood work done. You know,
Wow.
I don't even know if I had health insurance then. You know, I mean, I think I was probably still on my mom and dad's at that time, you know, 21, right? So
Yeah.
anyway, so my
But health
perspective,
wasn't like the front of your wasn't the front of your
no,
mind at that time.
it was
21 years
not.
old.
I'm pretty
Okay.
sure clothes was the thing that was on mine, just fitting into clothes better. You know,
Hmm.
a nice polo shirt or something, whatever. You know, that was whatever I could look better in for that weekend night, or you know, going out. Man, what a
Yeah,
life!
that that resonates with me too. I mean, I think that's probably why a lot of people start thinking about their, I don't want to say health, but you start thinking about your appearance because
Yeah.
you're
Yeah,
in social settings and you're going out and just become more aware. They're like, wow, I'm a bigger guy. And you start wearing clothes and
yeah.
you're like, oh, my belly's bulging out here. And like,
Yeah.
I remember all
Yeah.
of this and I would just like
It
obsess
just gets harder
over
to
it.
fit in certain spaces. You know what I mean? You know, and you think about those things like, or if you get sucker punched and someone runs away, and you're trying to run them down Fifth Street,
Hmm.
it's a little harder to you breathe harder to run. You're like, God, I got to work out. I got to do something about this. You know what I mean? Like, what
Right.
if you know? Uh, yeah,
That's right.
that's probably
Okay, so
exactly
you go down to San Jose. It must have been like a crazy, right? Like I mean, this is the height of popularity for this show, and they do casting calls like in multiple cities, I think, right? So
yeah. I mean, they're doing nationwide casting
nationwide.
calls.
So the likelihood of getting picked is very, very, very small. Like how many people were there, and what was that experience like
You
coming
know
onto the
what?
casting call?
By the time we arrived, I remember we parked and like I remember just looking out in the parking lot, you know, and just seeing one. I remember seeing a news van, NBC 4. You know, I saw that news van, and I just saw just bodies, large bodies in line, and
Mm,
just snaking in and out of the parking lot, and thinking like,
where
man.
are
And I remember
we?
looking at,
Where?
I just remember looking at Polly like, hey, let's get this. You know, like my like that
Mm.
like competitive spirit that lives within me to go out there and just get the job done was ready and accessible. And so, and I remember.
Would you say it was like hundreds of thousands, or would you say thousands? I don't know. I mean, I'm just trying to picture that for.
There was hundreds for sure.
Okay.
But I think we got there early though too.
Okay.
So we were in line early enough to know that, well, thankfully we're here because who knows how many people they're going to see today, right? Yeah. So I just remember being like, all right, let's, we had like our Black Dickie shirts on, what I mean, from bouncing the night before, and that was our get up, right? That's just kind of what we had on, and we didn't look like we worked security for Biggest Loser. Before,
yeah.
Anyway, so we had that whole look, and that was just when we show up, we get in line, we get in this fat line, and it's so weird, never mind, I don't want to get into that sociology thing, but anyway, so it's like we get in line, and I genuinely remember being like, dude, that guy's way fatter than I am. I don't think I'm going to get in, And that's just the arrogance, I guess, and it's like the arrogance of a 21-year-old, who definitely needed to be here, obviously, but still, that was what that was.
So you almost didn't think that you needed to be, like, even though this was health driven, like at that time, you didn't really believe that you needed any help because you were 21 years old, maybe a little out of shape, but not necessarily needing the help that some of these people are like, that's what they're there for. They're like, I've, given up.
Morbid obesity, you know what I mean? Like, which is a term I wasn't even aware of until, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't know, like, I didn't know BMI. I didn't know that, even though it's an archaic scale, I get that, but it's still like, I didn't know what that was. It was just speaks to my own ignorance on health and just my, being my physical shape in general. Right. And, because you don't know what you don't know. Yeah. So
how much did you, I'm curious how much you did weigh at that time.
At that time going in. So by the time we got on the show, I think I weighed in like 370 something. 372 was my starting weight for the show, from what I remember.
Pretty big guy. And you're pretty tall. How tall are you?
Yeah, 6'3", so a fair height. So the weight normally sits well on me,
People say you carry your weight well, or
yes. Yeah. I mean, my whole life, my mom said, he's big boned, it's like, those things, those kind of like escapist, ego.
Yeah.
So you guys are there. You start checking out so you go into like competitive mode, and you're like checking out the competitors, and you're like, oh, there's no way. So you start in your mind, you start calculating like, wait a minute, that guy's way bigger than me. I don't think
so like a low level of doubt settles in, right? It's just like, man, because you're ignorant in this moment. Like, you have no idea what's going on. Like, this is like a crazy experience, and you're just in a line. Right. It's like a cattle call, right? You're just like, all right. You're just walking through. And I remember, and then NBC starts doing interviews in the parking lot, wherever. They're just going around talking to people. And, and I was like, and I remember looking at Cole, I was like, dude, they're going to talk to us. And you have that feeling. Yeah. You call it destiny, or, that like your access to God, or, just like, hey, like this change is going to happen, and this is going to help perpetuate that, help kick off that whole transformation, and I remember the field reporter that came up. She comes up and speaks, and she's like, "All right, so who do we have here? What are your names? What do you do, and what brings you out here?" Which is like, and I said, "Oh, well, hey, my name is Sam. It's my cousin Coley. We live in, we're in the Santa Rosa area, in the North Bay, Santa Rosa, California. And, I think the question was like, when you lose the weight, like, what are you going to do? It's like, what's going to happen? So when you make it on the show and you lose the weight, what are you going to do?" And I remember saying, what I'm going to say, what I want to do is I want my family members to stop asking me to help them move. I'm the big guy. They're like, oh, hey, can we need you to help us move this thing? Like, oh, so and so is moving from here to there, and it's like, oh, we need your help. Oh, so and so has a truck, go ride with them, help carry everything. And I was like, and I remember saying like, I want to look. I don't want to lift your arm wire anymore. Like I don't want to. I want to be so skinny and so thin. Just be like, oh, don't ever ask me again. Like, you don't even think of calling me to do the work. And she started dying. Like the reporter, she started cracking up. And if there's a moment where you felt like things were in the bag, or at least the bag was there, you're like, okay, I feel this. This is a good ship.
Yeah, so something happened. That interaction right there made you feel like, I don't know what's going to happen after this, but we're definitely in it at this point.
That's going to end up on TV. That's good television right there. So
I just want to say too, like, that's the one thing that Polynesian people are really known for, honestly, and it could be a generalization, but it's the humor, like the laughing, the levity. There's always humor around everything that we do, and then there's always that fun that, and I think that's probably why they caught your eye, was that most people probably were talking about how their weight has affected their life negatively. But here you guys, are laughing about the fact that you're tired of people asking you to help them move, So I think it's so funny that you talk, because even now I just want to set that for the audience that in our culture, it's always very fun and very humorous to a fault sometimes, because instead of taking something serious, we laugh about it as if it's like casual, but yet, our health is suffering, you know what I mean? But I just wanted to set that so that people can understand, like, it's very much a very like, fun loving and like, I don't know, laughing, humorous type of interaction when you come across any Polynesians, I would say.
Oh yeah. Sorry. I mean, and honestly, it cuts the thickness of the air.
Yeah.
The tension, right? And that anxiety that you may be feeling. And maybe that's what the tool is,
Yeah.
It's like a defense mechanism at times, right?
Right.
And so you have that moment.
So they obviously know there's something special about you two, and then then what happens? You guys nail the audition, or?
Yeah, so they bring us in, and so we sit at a table with 10 couples in total, so 20 others, right? 18 others, because myself and Coley included. I remember the casting director, she had a timer. Anyway, she turns it over. She's like, all right, who are you? What are you doing? What brings you here? 2 minutes, turns it over. And I was like, damn, 2 minutes with all of us, like each person? No. But like, that's what we had, so she puts it over, and it's like, so each person has like roughly 10, 15 seconds to really kind of, give this your introduction, and I knew there were going to be some hijackers there. So, and some overclockers, and, there were, and you had those moments where there were people that were crying immediately. Waterworks turned on, like they were getting into character, like a method actor, I was like, dude, what? Starts crying immediately. You see someone start crying immediately, and oh, I'm so tired of, like, I remember just walking to the stores and having kids pointing at me like, hey mom, there's Santa Claus. I remember a guy saying that, and I was like, dude, you just milked 45 seconds from that 2-minute clock. And I remember just like immediately just being, all right, look, Sam, Coley, like, oh, we're both bouncers from Santa Rosa, California. We're here to change our lives, or whatever it may be, and I don't remember exactly I mean, that's kind of like essentially the synopsis of what that quick moment was. But I remember just thinking, like, I couldn't imagine, that's like speed dating, right? And so,
2 minutes for 20 people.
Yeah,
you really have to like say something or do something that's memorable, or just makes whoever's the casting directors or the producers who are there just think like, oh, okay, this is someone who would be compelling to watch on TV.
Yeah. 100%.
Because everybody
And
there has a lot of weight to lose. I'm assuming most everyone.
yeah,
Everyone has experienced like hardship because of it. I'm sure there's so many remarkable stories in that crowd, in that audience. And so to be picked out is to say, like, I almost wonder if did you in that group of 20, did you call out that person who was crying?
for wasting our time.
Yeah.
Um, no, but I did cut him off.
Hmm.
I remember like having like we got to keep it moving. And for the sake of everyone getting something, having something to say, we all trying to eat here, right? Theoretically. So that happens, and I mean, the 2 minutes is up, and they cut, and they're like, okay, if you don't get a call by, I don't know, it was like 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock today, that day, if you get a call, that means you're going to be asked back for the second interview. So we're just like, all right, let's wait it out, and yeah, shortly after, I think it was like a little after 4, Coley gets the call for the second interview, and we got it, and we're like, what are the chances? Because we saw what we were up against, and we saw like just kind of
Mm-hmm.
the hurdle that was in front of the mountain, right? And we couldn't believe it, but it felt, I don't know, divine. It felt like,
Mm.
yeah, this is gonna work out. We'll be okay, And
So
we made our way back.
fast forward, you get cast for the show,
Okay,
and
yeah,
yeah, no,
for sure.
let's get to
Let's start
the meat of
the
the
work.
experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, like what was it, what was it like to find out and then go there, and what were some of the highlights of being in that experience?
So it was at King Gillette Ranch in Carlsbad, California. Gillette, the shaver,
Mm.
that it was that individual's property that they had converted into a state park. The state park became the filming grounds for The Biggest Loser, and they had a big kitchen. Obviously a commercial sized kitchen for if that was film ready, camera ready. They had built a gym on the property, so which was walking distance from the home, which is where we did all of our workouts at. Um, it was it was a crazy experience. It was unique for sure, but it was there were so many good moments, some bad moments too, but like I think the good far outweighed the bad. So
How long were you at the
in total, like we arrived in like, I don't want to say the end of August, maybe September of 2009. I want to say there were 12 couples maybe, and yeah, I want to say, yeah, 12, yeah, so 24 people, and all living in this house together, strangers. So it's like a social experiment, sociology at its
Mm.
finest, and different cultures, different backgrounds, different areas of the United States, and so you just got to know people, and everyone for the most part was pretty cool. Good experience getting to know people. There's the dramas that always went around. That was like good for TV, sure, but
So I got a question
um,
for you. Like, as
yeah,
far as the health goes now, so now you've made it onto this show, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
Prior to getting onto the show, you kind of didn't really, you were more performance based in regards to your health, being that you were an athlete. But now that you notice you're in this house full of people that are older than you, that actually have health concerns and health issues, did it ever set into you that like, man, there's my like, what were your thoughts about health at that point? Like, was it still kind of like foreign to you, or did any of the ideas like, wow, these are actually like real people with like real health concerns? Like, did that ever like, when
I don't know if
did
that
that
landed.
happen? Yeah.
I don't know if it landed per se, but I would say that because you do like a full on like a physical, like you do your VO2 max to check your body fat percentage. I mean, we sat in this thing. I forget it's like a bod pod. We were inside this thing, and you have like you where you put that swim cap on, and but you do like bone density scanning. You do all these things with like body fat percentage, like barometric pressure, and I don't remember the whole science of it, anything about it. But anyway, you're doing all of these tests that are obviously blood tests as well, and you're doing all these things, and it's pretty remarkable. And so you start to see your number, and start to see your life in like in kind of like in numbers, right? Because now you get to see your health on a scale, and you get to see your, how you're doing in these levels, and blood, not only blood pressure, but blood sugar, and and all those things that truly resonate and they make sense to you. But at the same time, man, I was just trying to learn, you know,
Mm.
and I realized what I was doing there. I was trying to learn, and at the same time, I was trying to compete. It's still a game show at its core. People are getting eliminated every week, which is a weird thing, but it was happening, and it was a part of why it was just a part of the situation.
Yeah, and
You don't.
for our listeners, I'm sure many of them have probably seen or know about The Biggest Loser, but that's it. It's a reality show, and who can lose the most amount of weight in the time, and that's how they decide every week, right? Like how
Yeah,
much weight
it
you've
was
lost. It's a
using it was
percentage of
using we had the lowest percentage of weight loss, or, whoever lost the highest percentage of body weight
right.
would be crowned the
That's
ultimate
right.
winner,
And so every
essentially.
week there's a weigh in, but during the week you're doing a lot of intense work, right? Like you're
Yeah,
working out all the time. I mean, it seems like just to someone watching it, like this seems so grueling. Like, how are you, like, what was your mindset going through that?
you know it. It's amazing what your body can adjust to and get used to,
Hmm,
and in some ways want more of.
hmm,
It's like you had these extremely difficult workouts, and you didn't. Your mind, the mind, like the brain, the way it starts playing with things, you're like, oh, well, I don't feel like I got enough. You just start thinking to yourself like, I need to get a greater workout in. It's like, well, you would have thought, no, like a month, 3 weeks ago, I would have never have said these things. But,
hmm,
your body starts to feel good. You start to feel, everything, biochemistry, all these things start to change. And it's
hmm.
like, you know, and you start to feel better,
So even those crazy, grueling workouts started to feel good to you.
Absolutely.
That's
The
cool.
hardest ones
Hmm,
they felt the best. And you started to crave those workouts. They call them last chance workouts. And,
hmm,
you know, on the show, that's what they'd call it because it was the last workout you did before the theatrical weigh-in, and I think a lot of people during that time of the show, the airing of the show, people want to know if a week was a full week or things like that. And it was like, as far as like getting weighed in, right? And not every week was the same. Some in the beginning there was, I think there might have been like up to 2 weeks of working out before our first weigh-in. So you saw these large astronomical numbers, where someone would lose over 40 pounds, in a TV week. And it's like, it's just unrealistic, to tell people like, yeah, that person lost 40 pounds in 1 week. No, that happened maybe 2 weeks in, which is still crazy.
yeah.
But, at the same time, it's like, I don't know. It almost seems like malpractice.
Well, it's interesting you use that word because I mean there was a study. Are you aware there was like a research study that came out like I want to say like 5 or 6 years ago? They actually they looked at Biggest Loser contestants. They studied their metabolism, and what they found was there was even years after being off the show, there was a long-term slowing of the metabolism because of that experience. Is that something you're
Yeah.
aware of?
Yeah. I became aware of it. That study that you were talking about, where a high percentage of contestants, end up putting their weight on, if not more. You saw that's very common. I myself am someone who, yeah, absolutely has put on the weight, and will continue to address that in the way I live my life and how I address health in my existence moving forward as now a
Mm.
37-year-old man.
Mm. How much weight did you lose on the show?
On the show, close. I want to say up to about nearly 150 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah, and I fluctuated. Like even when I got off the show, like maybe the next day, I was probably up like 30 pounds simply on just because I was drinking water again, or because I had,
Mm.
because I introduced carbs back into my life. Never the good ones, always simple carbs at that point. But
What
um,
was the calorie intake like during the
show. Yeah.
God, during the show, man, there were some weeks where we were prescribed try to consider something around like 700. Yeah, so it was calorie depletion, right?
Damn, how do you even
So
sustain a
That's
workout?
like a starvation. Yeah, that's like a starvation
yeah,
diet.
I mean, anyways, but they said don't count the greens, so consume as
Well,
much.
that's because greens don't have that many calories.
Right.
Yeah.
A pound of broccoli has 100 calories, so that's why
Yeah.
you don't count
So
them.
like
Because
you were told that don't count the greens, so eat up as much. So it was like I became best friends with spinach. Like spinach salad and stuff like that. It was like that became just because it felt like I was the mechanism of
yeah,
eating, fork to mouth, stuff like that. Like it was my brain was just like okay, well at least he's eating because we did like BMRs, basal metabolic rate testing or RMR, resting metabolic rate. We tested that every day or every week before weigh-in.
oh,
Weigh-ins were we got up every morning, you'd line up and you go in and they'd have a casting or whoever was from production would be in there, and they'd take down your whatever weight you were, and then you had you had to do a hydration test as well. So like you had to like pee, they had to like check your hydration, they had like a spectrometer to check to make sure that you were hydrated. And that way you couldn't like sweat out before every your weigh in and then be completely gaunt. So you can just for the sake of losing the weight, dropping the water weight, and reading a number that's going to keep you there. Anyway,
so you lose a big percentage of your body weight.
yeah,
375 was
I think it was
120
like
pounds.
30 something percent of my body weight at that time.
Wow. I mean, that in itself, like leaving that experience, you must have felt, you were a different person. I mean, you certainly looked like a different person, but you probably felt like a different person too.
Yeah, 100, absolutely, man. Because I was wearing clothes that were like my social life was fun.
Hmm.
I was enjoying myself. And then and also like taking on a whole different existence. I got hired on by the so there used to be Big Suzu used to have a resort. Big Suzu used to have a resort, and they used to have these resorts throughout a few of them throughout the nation, and they had one in Malibu, which at the time I relocated and lived in West Hollywood with my son's mother. At the time we were living together after the show, obviously. And I became a group fitness trainer and worked there at the resort because it was a resort. It was an exclusive resort to the Big Suzer brand. At that time because they were the most popular thing on television.
People would
So
come to the
so
resort
people
to
would
lose
they would
weight,
pay
or
to have these like there was like there was a vacation destination that was like fitness based. And so they would come in. They had, they do like 3 workouts a day, room and board taken care of. You had like a health oriented chef that would, their meals were taken care of. So yeah, and so they learned about, there's also an educational too, right? So you learn about calorie intake, calories in versus calories out, and you're learning that kind of numbers science of a pound of fat and things like that. As well as, this medical testing that they did too. And every week there was roughly anywhere from, I think 65 to 80 people there a week, and they were staying over and they were staying on site.
hmm.
They had these like cabins that they all stayed in. Yeah,
And
and I was working.
were they limited to 700 calories a day?
No, they were not.
Yeah.
That was not a prevailing philosophy
No,
that existed outside of the camera.
outside of the camera. Yeah. No, so you
Yeah.
were like a trainer and a
Yeah, I was a trainer,
instructor.
and I would say slash mascot.
Mm,
you know,
right.
because I was, the contestant that lost the weight, that got fit, and now was kind of like giving back to the overweight community or the community, the health conscious community, and yeah,
Hmm.
so that became kind of what I did there. I
Well,
loved what I was
inspiring,
doing.
right, Sam?
Oh yeah,
Like
it was very
inspiring. I mean,
inspiring,
people come
100%.
to the camp, to the resort, and they're
Yeah,
like, "Wow, this is somebody who made this transformation. I can do this too."
for sure. And I get to work out with him.
Yeah.
and I was good at what I did. You know, I mean, I was also because I taught classes too. Like I did like a dynamic stretch class in the morning. So and it was like, but it was only on like I think maybe Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And so it was funny though because like the clients would wake up and show up to my 6 a.m. class, and it'd be their first day, and they'd be like, they double take like they're looking at who I was, like, oh, hey, and they'd be like, what's up, like let's start this class, and so we're gonna go get on the wall, and we'd start like doing dynamic warm ups and getting them ready because the first thing they did was after they had my class is that they went on because we were like up in the Santa Monica Mountains, so we had hiking ranges everywhere around us. So they would start off with a morning hike, and I was a hiking
Oh,
instructor too.
oh,
So
cool.
I was hiking,
So
and I
this
was
was
always,
in
they always,
2010.
2000, yeah, 2010 for sure, prime 2010,
2010.
hiking nonstop. In fact, because I was so busy and just working out every day, like this became part of my life. Like I was lighter than I was on the show, just because of work, and because I was eating everything was saving money by eating on campus and eating with the guests. So it was
So
a great life, So
it was a great life. You shared where you are now in life and what sort of brings you joy at this particular moment in your life.
for me, what brings me joy is fatherhood. I have a 9.5-year-old son.
Hmm.
His name is Dylan. He is absolutely why I've just corrected the course of my existence
Hmm.
to be the best version of myself. Has truly been all in his favor.
Hmm.
So in 2011, I had a near fatal fall where I fell 54 feet, 5 stories from a building top in the Pacific Heights district of San Francisco. The injuries that took place were a fractured tibia and fibula, a completely shattered pelvis,
Oh.
a punctured lung, severed kidney, 67 fractures in my face alone, and what's remarkable because I'm gorgeous, right? So it's like you have that issue. But the greatest of all the injuries was the traumatic brain injury. They had to do a craniectomy to take the bone flap out. Sorry, to take the piece of the cranium out, like kind of the size of my hand, yeah. And then eventually a cranioplasty. Well, they obviously let the swelling and everything, the absorption to take place for the brain. And once that process took place, then they did a cranioplasty where they put the bone flap back on. My neurosurgeon, Dr. Andrews, he did the best he possibly could to kind of re-articulate that those pieces of the cranium back together. The problem is that it wasn't a perfect fit, it wasn't like an anatomical articulation. It was the best that he could do, and there was left with airways and these pockets where I was having these crazy headaches,
Hmm.
and it
Wow.
was easily overstimulated. Um, I would go to like a Giants game and have to leave by like the fourth inning.
Hmm.
I go to a Warriors game and leave at halftime. So it was like, these were tough times simply based on not being able to enjoy the things that I had previously enjoyed all of my life. So my course of living and, my lifestyle just altered, not only because of, but just the things that, just the way you want to live life and enjoy your existence,
The quality
It
of
was like,
life.
it's like you do your best to get away from, okay, like, yeah, I have this traumatic brain injury, right? I live life after the fall. But when you're always remembered of the fall because you can't escape these searing headaches, it's like,
Hmm.
I can't live life like this, So I've had a revision surgery since then. In 2016, I had a revision surgery where eventually I had a titanium implant installed
Wow.
um, on the left side of my cranium, but this literally the size of my hand, that covers this whole area here. Um,
Wow.
and it's funny because I remember Dr. Andrews telling me, like, now your brain will eventually you'll kind of adapt to the new space and the confines that it has, and it will grow. And neurons and everything will attach, and they will fire, and all of
Hmm.
these things. And I was like, "This sounds awesome," you know what I mean? And it's likely that your headaches will go away. I was like, "Well, winner," right? Like these headaches that have been bothering me for the years post, fall could potentially go away. And at the same time, I wanted to go back to school. That became my mission after that.
Okay.
And
No, because we were asking you about your enjoyment about life now, and you mentioned your son, and I kind of want to ask you about that. Like, I know now that's part of the main reason why you grow, but during the time of the fall, what was the main reason then? Because at that time, I don't think Dylan was born just yet, right? He was
no,
born.
not yet. Um, Dylan came. So Dylan came after his mom and I got married. She was pregnant with Dylan, and we separated during that time and would ultimately divorce. Sadly, so Dylan has never known both his parents to live in the same household. I went through a really tough time. I think mentally I was down and out, and it was during these times where I would confide with Poe. I felt myself entering like a real dark place. One of the major reasons I believe the, that we separated, ultimately what became the impetus was infidelity. But even prior to that, it was infidelity during moments of like being, that were driven through alcohol, partying and wanting to, I was,
Mm,
I went on the show when I was 23 years old. You know what I
mm,
mean? And I came out of the show with a new body, a whole new look, and gaining attention that I'd never ever received before, and succumbing to temptation that I had never thought I'd
mm.
ever arrive at my front door. That's not an excuse, but it's a part of the situation. It's a factor, and I gave into those things, and we would eventually separate, part ways, and then divorce, right? Dylan was then eventually born in 2013. I was still gathering life. You know, the fall happened in 2011. I had
You were still dealing
physical
with the
therapy,
headaches. You were probably
Yeah, yeah.
right. You were
still
probably.
going through the headaches, everything. I had speech therapies, occupational therapies, um, you know, physical therapy, right? Because I had to learn how to walk again.
Mm,
Speech therapy to work on inflection or enunciation. And now I think I speak phenomenally, but that's through hard work, right?
right.
Yeah.
So, and all of those things, and occupational therapy because while in one of my surgeries, I ended up having a stroke. I think it was like I had a infarct in my basal ganglia, so so the left side of my body is a little bit neurologically delayed
Mm,
than the right side. So I have these like involuntary spasms in my left hand where I'll clench up and I'll have to like even while in this interview I have to like keep my hand open and I'll end on my kneecap to kind of just keep it spread.
mm.
Similar things will happen with my left foot.
Well, I just want to reflect on what I heard. So first of all, yeah, that your son has been a blessing. Dylan has been a blessing in your life, and
Yeah,
he is your main inspiration and main reason why you drive yourself to grow now on a regular basis. And
yeah,
this his birth happened in the aftermath, I would say aftermath of a terrible, horrendous accident where you
yeah,
fell 5 stories,
yeah. 54 feet in total.
54 feet, had this incredible injury to your skull and your brain, and then for several years suffered the effects of that. Even now, suffer some of the after effects of that, just as you were sharing. But thankfully, you were able to get reconstructive cranioplasty, and many of the debilitating symptoms, it sounds like, have gotten much better to the point where you were able to go back to school. And we're going to get into that. I'm very curious to learn what you've been up to. But I mean, certainly you shared your life altering accident that happened a year later. And in the context of that, you also shared that you were sort of experiencing and enjoying life, right? You said kind of going out a lot, drinking. You were young, and you were kind of, it sounds like, enjoying your new body,
Yeah, I
and
was like my new
and
car, right?
yeah, like a new car, huh? like
Yeah.
That's a great way.
the interest and intrigue that comes with not just for yourself, but with other people.
Yeah. It's like I upgraded from a jalopy to a Ferrari. You know what I mean? So it was like, it was, or Poe would know this one, from a Datsun to a Ferrari. So
That was my old
anyway,
car. I had a Datsun, just for
Oh, you did.
reference.
Oh, you did.
Oh wow,
Poe,
yeah,
Poe, Poe, and I want to say also, Poe, you were inspired. Like that, this is something we obviously talked about. Like Poe was so inspired. He saw your transformation. He saw Coley's transformation, and he sort of, I think, got it in his head. Like, I need to get on a reality
yeah,
show. It's the way to transform myself.
right. Because it was almost like doing it in your own life was just either not really possible because you haven't seen any examples of anybody doing it other than Sam and Coley, right? They, went off and they casted for a show, they got picked, and then they came back like these two different looking people. And I think I at that time had kids. So my whole thing was just like, man, I need to get my health together. So for me, it was really about my health. You know what I mean? Like I was really concerned about being around. And so after seeing that, that kind of got me to start thinking like, well, dang, if they can do it, then I could do it. But I just remember like it really just from my experience of Sam during that transformation was just like remarkable, man. Like, I mean, the dude left and came back like damn near like a superhero. Like, dude was just cut. Like, it was just it was just crazy to see. Like, it was like just crazy to see it in front of your eyes. And the fact that they did it in such a short period of time was even more of like, what? How do they do this?
Well, then the injury happened, and so that obviously had a big effect on your life, both immediately and then I know you've already shared since the years that have followed, but you talk about, I mean, right away when it happened, I imagine there was this reckoning with like who you were, who you had become, and like what was going to happen going forward.
Yeah, there was a huge, like, I don't know, yeah, like a reckoning would be fair to say, or even a revelation, right? But like one of like, again, finite focus and mortality. Like I'm not here forever, and by the absolute gift of God, or that I still managed to still be here. Considering just the fall in its own. I remember my physiatrist. I think is that a study of medicine?
Yeah, physical medicine and rehabilitation, or physiatry is the name
No,
for it.
physiatrist. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Ing, I believe his name was. He came in and he asked because I think my parents were in there at the time in the room. And he asked them to step aside. Just he can speak with me. And I remember him saying like, "Man," he's like looking at my chart, and he started laughing. He was like, 9 out of 10 times when anything like this happens, it's a dead person that would be in front of me.
Mm.
And the only reason why I can say 9 is because you're the one that made it. Like he was very candid in our conversation. And I was like, and I remember like my eyes opening, like, oh, we're talking like that today. Like okay, but it dawned on me. I was like, oh, okay. He's like, yeah. And in fact, it was him that kind of planted the seed of going back to school.
Mm.
He's like, hey, if you haven't completed your undergrad yet, like consider like going back to school,
Mm.
and because the best thing you can do for your brain is treat it like a muscle.
Mm.
Treat it like a muscle, and and just work it out.
Mm.
Take in critical thinking and different styles. Just take in this information, and grow yourself. And
Mm.
I
Well,
considered it.
I want to say, one, I heard that you you had such a traumatic fall that even the doctor taking care of you was like, you shouldn't be here. Like the odds were definitely against you, but you
Yeah,
had been so fit at up until that, right? I mean, I think
yeah.
that's what saved you, was that you probably had this phenomenal core strength. Like I can't
Yeah.
imagine, right? You maybe were
I
able
was
to brace
also
yourself.
so this fall happens. I was also at a high blood alcohol level as well, and the belief was that probably helped me from actually because I was intoxicated, that my body just kind of went limp. That I wasn't like
Mm.
kind of like rigid, on my fall or trying to brace my fall. I just kind of
Oh,
floated in the air and then down
It's
I came,
amazing,
right?
dude.
So,
wow.
but in fact, on my way down, I hit a tree branch, right? And so I hit this tree branch that's kind of, that's planted on the side of the street. I forget, it's like Washington or whatever street it was over in Pacific Heights. Anyway, and it turned, I think hits me, so it turns me to my side, and I hit the right side of my body. And so as I land, hit the right side of my body, everything shifts to the left, which is why they did the craniectomy up here, on the left side, which is to
Wow.
allow for, everything to take
Wow.
place there. But yeah, and in many ways, that tree branch kind of saved my existence as a part of the story,
Yeah.
just
But
the way
maybe
it ended up
your
working.
physical fitness too. Like if you weren't in
Yeah,
that size too, it's like there's so many things
absolutely.
like that's just like amazing about how you even
Mm.
survive that.
Yeah, physical fitness, right? Because I mean, I had a very well conditioned heart, and so I was able to fight in these, when my mind goes into a complete, like panic mode, chaos mode, right? My brain is like in panicking, trying to figure out what's even happening to the system, and the skeletal bones, the muscle and skeletal bones that exist, and it's just like trying to figure out like why is this happening to you, and and then it starts to shut down certain areas, right, as it's to kind of keep itself alive and preserve itself, because self-preservation is the law of the land. So yeah, and all these things take place. These these processes, these medical or these phenomena, in ways that they take place in the human body. And obviously me being at peak, level definitely helped, and contributed towards my survival. And I think, yeah, and that then the rebuild begins, right? At that point.
Mm.
But I mean, further, I mean, many miracles even took place even following that. I think there's like, I want to say there's 49 fire stations in San Francisco, and each of them are like 3 minutes from each other, and, or maybe more, I don't know, 7 minutes, I think it was, from each other. And not only that, but that 911 call went out, and I actually had to listen to the 911 call. And the 911 call goes out, because the neighbor down below thought she heard glass being broken out front, and she thought it was she. I remember she said, "I think he's homeless." He's just laying on the ground, and
Mm.
I remember hearing this thing. I was like, and the vanity of me, he's like, "I was wearing a Patagonia vest. How did I look homeless?" Like, anyway, that's part of the comedy of it all. I'm just thinking like, okay, and so they get on site, they get to me within 3 minutes. So paramedics are on,
Mm.
are out there providing life-saving support within 3 minutes. I should give credit, to I think Jennifer Warden, I think her name was. She drove the ambulance from Pacific Heights to San Francisco General, which is a considerable distance, but gets me there into, the emergency room within in less than like 12 minutes time. You know,
Mm.
so it's like high alert. All of these things are happening. When I look at it, like the kind of like the ecology of this moment, it's like all of these amazing miracles are kind of really taking place simultaneously in order to kind of get me to where I am today. Really, if I'm being honest and humble about it. And yeah, they bring me in, and phone calls are made. Obviously my sister receives the first phone call, and because they first Stephanie got the phone call, and then my son's mother, and then eventually my parents would make it to General, San Francisco General, and family would arrive,
Mm.
and the social worker meets with my parents. And usually the social worker is not being spoken to unless we're planning for your final, the finality of you. right? And so, and came and talked, just kind of gave a quick update, like on my condition. And I think um, they told my parents that I had roughly a 9% chance of survival.
Hmm.
And you look at the inverse of that, right? That's like a 91% chance of failure. And so you're like, oh, he's going to, he's failing and being able to make it, but he's going to get an A+ in dying. So, this is probably consider how your goodbyes with this, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
And
That's
you, and
incredible.
yet, yeah, that is incredible. Wow. So, I mean, what it really is like, that makes so much more sense. Like you were reflecting on the fleeting nature of life, because in many respects, like odds were, you shouldn't have been with us. Like
Yeah.
you should have died from that terrible accident, and you didn't. And so emerging from that, then with all these symptoms, and it sounds like for several years you went, I'm guessing, in and out of doctors' offices and trying to get some answers and some relief. And how did all of this affect your kind of overall, I would say, state of mind and mental health?
It was hard for me to accept mentally, because I would look in the mirror and I would see this like slump and this indentation in my head. And, because I had this prior to the titanium implant, right? So I would see this, honest to God, this slump that I used to, I hated it. I was like, man, and I had like almost, I had like a droop in my eye, at least the way I perceived myself. And I was like, man, and it was hard for me because and it's the vanity in me, I would say, because I immediately, like you forget about your blessings, in moments like that. The fact that you're alive still, and you're living that holding that space, that attitude of gratitude, and you start, criticizing yourself. Like, man, like, dude, you're living a great life. You're the trainer down there. You had clients and you were traveling. You were enjoying yourself. You're in the best shape of your life, and you know, and now like it was like this complete rebuild, really. And mentally, and and honestly, I felt alone. If I'm being candid here, because I couldn't talk to anyone to help them. To like, hey, this is what I'm going through. Like this is, and because this experience was not relatable, right? Like, who else? I didn't know anyone that was, that had been, and that could have been just me. It could have, just, isolating myself because, that sometimes when you're isolating yourself, you don't think there's a way out, and I started seeing, therapists and, psychiatrists and, just some, just someone to talk to, like, hey, these intrusive thoughts they come to mind. And, it's like, you start to debate the question, why am I even here? Why does this even matter? Like sometimes the pain becomes so excruciating because you can't walk right and you're having so much trouble. And it's like, like, did I live did I survive just to suffer? You know what I mean? Like, what are we doing here? And, but, I don't know. I think like, I don't, and now looking back at that process, as grueling as it was, there was glory there. You know what I mean? It was, yeah, I can recall it like not being as bad as I was making it in that moment, which I think speaks to life in general. It's never as bad as we think it is. It's never as good as we think it is. So, I think that in that moment, those tough times, they were kind of wavered by, optimistic thinking. I don't know,
I'm sure
blind
the
faith.
birth of your son, which happened during that time, right? Your son was born then in
Yeah,
what, 2014,
2013. He
2013.
was born. 2011 was the fall. 2012 was the wedding. April, December was discharge from the hospital from CPMC, which was California Pacific Medical Center, on Castro. So I think it's on, yeah, up that way. Anyway, so I was released, to go home from there, and then I began the outpatient therapies. Living in Southern California, did all of my outpatient therapies at Cedar Sinai, um, and so I was in good care. Thankfully, our doctor from the television show, Dr. Robert Heisinger, he followed up with me and he stayed in contact with me and helped kind of, help baby step my way back to a prosperous recovery in a way. He made sure that, that I was getting good outpatient care as far as like physical therapy and stuff like that. He made sure that my PT was challenging. He told like the PT, the physical therapist, like, hey, this guy can take a lot. You need to challenge him, like in a way that yeah, challenge him in the way that a collegiate, NCAA coach, football coach might challenge their athlete, because that was the ethic that he knew me of, that he knew of me, and that's what was going to help me bring any kind of resemblance of a previous fall, or pre-fall self, and back. So marriage, 2012. In the beginning of 2013, we split. So we barely made. I don't even think we even made it a year. But we part ways, divorced, so then eventually divorced. My son was born in July of 2013. And so I think and I'm still trying to figure out all of this. Living life with this traumatic brain injury. Where do I even go? The first job that I got after my fall, I worked at Walgreens. You know what I mean? I needed to do work. Something. I was living with, my cousin. So, I mean, all of these things in the life that I was living was very, I don't know, like sometimes when you're living, you're just living, right? You're just going through these things. And yeah, these moments suck, but it's like, what's the alternative? Die back in September of 2011? No, we're alive now. So let's keep going, and I didn't allow myself to stay down too long, or to kind of wallow in my kind of, my feelings, my, whether it was a low level layer of depression or, any of those things. Like I just kind of, just kept it moving the best I could. I tried to get my job back at Biggest Loser Resort, and became like an assistant trainer there again and doing, some things like that. But it was never the same. My body felt so different. I was gaining weight again, and it was just like, all those things it was complicating. So my self-image became, I got self-conscious, and so all those things started factoring in, and it got really tough. Eventually, I would then choose to go back to school again in 2017.
Yeah. When did school, talk about school, and like, when did that become, all right, this is the next focus now is to finish my schooling?
Yeah, so I relocated to like Southern California, like Newport, Orange County, Newport Beach area. I was in a prominent relationship that I was in. The the woman that I was with, Hannah, I was dating. She had me signed up for classes at Orange Coast College, and she was like, "Hey, I just think while you're down here, it might be a good idea for you to go back to school. Just consider, kind of figure while you're trying to figure out what you want to do. Just here's a good starting line." I remember I signed up for summer class. It was an intro to kinesiology. And I don't know, it like awoken something, and something was awakened after that, and I began to think about my fall again, and thinking, even though I was living with these things daily, I didn't always think about it because I didn't want to dwell on that. And so I started thinking about, like, I wanted to learn more about it, like whether it's neuroscience or just health. That's what kinesiology was able to bring to me, was understanding of wellness, physical health, mental health, and spiritual health, and all these major components that really drive our existence. And I really started, preventative medicine became a huge, a focus as well. And I had a mentor, because my kinesiology professor at Orange Coast College, I kind of shared with him my experience and everything, and he was really interested and intrigued. And he kind of helped, kind of mentor me through this process. I mean, what I knew was that at the time I was flying every other weekend from Orange County, or John Wayne Airport in Orange County, to Oakland to see my son. I knew that when it came time to finish school or complete my undergrad, it was going to be back in the Bay Area because I was tired of making these travel arrangements. I needed to be closer to my son. So I tried to get through junior college as fast as I possibly could. And I got it done in like a year and a half. I was overloading semesters, taking up to like 24 units, you know. But meanwhile, in one of my first year back in junior college, I got the surgery done. When I got the implant put in, the titanium implant was installed, and honestly, those like promises that Dr. Andrews couldn't make at that time, um, they started to happen. You know, the headaches went away. I could stay focused in class. I could actually be in class an entire class period and have the energy to continue on. To do homework and get things accomplished and get good grades. I mean, I got my first 4.0 in junior college. That semester I had 24 units. Yeah, I had like 6 A's, and I was like, what the? And I made like the presidential dean's list, honor roll, and all these things. So like that confidence starts to build within and got it really excited. Like, man, this is awesome. Like I'm going to make something of this path. Like I had just, I had completed my associates in science to transfer and kinesiology. I was taking, like human anatomy, human physiology, chemistry. For some reason, I had to do OChem, which was, God, why? I'm sure Dr. Rock would be like,
that brings back some
yeah,
tense memories. Yeah,
and it's like
human anatomy. I'm sorry you had to do that.
Yeah, and I was like, I'm a kinesiology major. Like, why? Like, why am I taking like pre-med courses? Like, anyway.
And then you ended up. What did you end up studying when you went back to college?
Yeah, it was kinesiology, but I was health promotion concentration. So the focus was more like community and public health. It kind of like tiered towards the public health side, and like considering just being aware of like just community around the surroundings. Anyway, so all those things again, like going back to I took human anatomy 3 times. I withdrew from it twice because it was pure memorization. And, it's like you had to learn the O's, I's, and A's of every bone in the body. So your origins, the insertion points, and the action of those muscles. And it was like, what was cool about it was that I knew that all those things were true, that they existed up here. Like I'm learning about myself at the same time, right? So I was intrigued. Like I had to learn more. And I became good at it, I mean, I had, thankfully, through like the ADA, right? So like, Disabilities Act, I was able to get accommodations, So I was allowed for like more testing time or to help kind of offset or mitigate the issues of my disability. Because that's traumatic brain injury is a disability. So, but I think like I never wanted to think of it like that. Like I remember the first time like actually considering myself having a disability. I think I cried, because I was like, man, this is real. I can't fake it now. You know what I mean? Like since the fall, I've been like, like just kind of brushing it off, like not using that as an excuse for maybe forgetting that I forgot to lock the door or forgetting, certain behaviors or things like that. I just, I just assumed that. Yeah.
Got a question for you, Sam. So like, do you think after the accident or the fall, did it like sort of pique your interest in these things? Like, you know what I mean? Did that help after the fall? Did you kind of come to this revelation that like you really have an interest in, your studies, and did that help you with your therapy as regards to like coming out of the fall and kind of reinventing yourself?
Yeah, and I think also like in society, you're told that you have to have a college degree. You know what I mean? All of these things, and you to get the better job, the higher paying job, and so a lot of that was kind of like a motivation, right? That buying into that belief, and so I think I was like, all right, yeah, I want to get a better job, and I want, in order to provide for my son and give him the best possible life that I can give him. So that all factors into, and so then the studying, getting the degree became the focal point. Plus, like once it was time to transfer, I got out of junior college, and again, a year and a half. 2018, I transfer from Orange Coast College in Costa Mesa, California. I um, I wanted to go to University of San Francisco, um, but I took an info session, a transfer info session at St. Mary's College in Moraga, um, which is, my son lives in Lafayette, and it's, his front door to the school is like 5 minutes away. And I remember being on campus at the info session, being like, "Oh, this is where I'm coming." You know what I mean? I'm going to finish my undergrad here. And it was great because I was living in Moraga for the time that I was while I was there. For like this, I ended up spending, because I finished my degree in 2021. So living in Moraga for, obviously COVID hit, so I was living there for about 2.5 years, 3 years, and getting that done was a huge accomplishment. Because and not only that, but like even while on campus, like I would go pick up my son, for dinner, and we'd take him to dinner, and like I would go to the dining hall on campus. And it became a regular experience, it's just having he was then, 6 years old, 5 years old, walking around a college campus and just accepting the fact that this is a part of his life. This is a regular thing, which I thought was a great influence for him. So he knows, like, he knew his way around, and it was good because like even like the workers on campus, they would see him like, "Oh, hi, Dylan," because they got used to seeing him like, a few times a week when we'd meet up for dinner, and I'd have him for dinner. Yeah, man. And so all those things were all great. I felt like things were going great, and they were in the right place.
Did you have a sense of what you wanted to do, like with your work, with your career, with?
Um, I didn't. It hasn't been until recently that after job here or job there, and path this way. I've been a recreational coordinator and recreational, working at an administrative work, and just trying to figure things out. Obviously, kind of COVID kind of put things on in a weird frame, right? So now I'm doing an accreditation program to become a teacher in ESN, extensive support needs, so like special education teacher. Um, Currently working as a registered behavioral technician, with a fourth, fifth, and sixth grade combination class that's in like special ed, and it's fulfilling. It's awesome. Kids are great, and it's a great calling and a great pursuit in a weird moment in society where like teaching and the questions of teaching is being like on the chopping block, and it's like and methodologies and stuff like that. I'm like, and teachers are needed more than that because you were told. Remember, like in the '90s, you're told the entire time, like, oh, it's a terrible paying job. Don't even go that route. And now it's like the state of California is due. I was in a meeting, and they're like, oh, well, the state of California is due to hire over 70,000 teachers over the next 3 years. And it's not like that's not just a statewide thing. Like nationally, it's an issue that they're seeing, right? And I think because the
Yeah.
messaging and the branding for it has been terrible, you know.
Yeah.
But
So Sam, you've certainly walked a very unique path. One thing I'm curious about, just this sort of theoretical question, what would you say, like if you could go back and talk to your younger self, maybe your younger self before you embarked on The Biggest Loser, now that you've walked through so much in life, what might you say to your younger self?
that's a great question because you got to be reflective. I think I would tell myself, like try harder, work harder, and but never, live outside of the moment. You when you're younger, you always want to be older, and it's like, oh man, I can't wait till I'm that age, and it's like, oh, and then you get that age, like, man, I wish I was younger, right? Like that's like the common. It's just at society at large. It's what we do. It's just humanity in general. So I think, man, be present, be thankful, and yeah, live life and have as much fun as you can. My childhood was amazing, Dr. Rock. My childhood was awesome. Yeah, I was raised with a great family and a great family by a great family. Getting together every weekend. I mean, they were nuts. Far from perfect, but beautiful and amazing in every sense of the word. So I don't regret anything in that regard. So yeah, I think that's what I would tell myself. That youngest version of me is just, because there were times where I should have tried harder. I should have tried harder in school. I should have done, but I should have listened to my parents more. You may think that your parents don't know, but they do at that time.
Oh,
And so it's like now
yeah,
as
they
a
did.
parent, it's like, they think those things come full circle.
We call our show the Health Feast, and I always end it with, if you were coming to the Health Feast, doesn't have to be a food item, or it can if you want to, but we just want to know, like, what are you bringing to the feast? What life experiences or anything that you feel that you would offer or that you would bring to this health feast.
Consciousness. I don't know. I think, yeah, like, yeah, be present. You know what I mean? It's so important. I think we forget the journey. Easy to forget the journey. Just in this conversation with you guys, I started having all of these. I just brought up all of these memories and these moments of the hard work that it took to make it through. Because, man, mentally I was down and out. Like being divorced and fighting with having a traumatic brain injury and not being able to drive anywhere, and all of these things that just kind of like, you know, a lesser man would have quit. You know what I mean? The lower, a lesser version of myself gives up. So and doesn't get anything done. So that's what I always think the alternative is. When I always say, what's the alternative? Because the alternative is never a path that I'm going to take. We got to persevere here. We got to push through and get things accomplished somehow, some way. And giving up will never, ever be a resolution. So I think that's bring to the feast. I mean, I'd love to bring things that probably aren't legal in some states, but well, I want to help open up your mind. Start thinking about, I don't know, just
So it
why.
sounds like being present, and you're saying, I think it sounds like resilience. You know what I mean? Like just
Yeah,
talking about your story. I mean, you might say presence is one measure, but I also would be like, man, just listening to your story come from you, and I've known you, I know you personally, and it's like, wow, man. I mean, you're right. I mean, that's a heck of a story. I mean, even if you list the injuries that you sustained, that's like a car wreck, like that. The list of injuries that you've had is just, and the fact that you're here right now talking to us, it's a great reminder, you know, for me. So
Yeah, resilience,
yeah,
100%. It's you said what's the alternative? I mean, so many people in that situation would just give up.
yeah,
Would say this is
totally
this is too much. This is too hard.
right.
This isn't a mountain I want to climb. And it sounds like, I mean, on the receiving end is your son, Dylan, who has this powerful example. Wow, my father's someone who had this terrible, terrible accident and just clawed his way back. Every day he tries to get a little bit better. That's a really amazing role model you are for him. I mean, when I heard your story from Poe, that's what really resonated with me, is that, in the light of everything that has happened to you, you still ask yourself, and you said it yourself, like, what can I do? I heard that throughout the story. Like, what can I do in this situation? What do I have control over? And how can I get a little bit better, even when the situation seems so dire?
yeah, absolutely. I once heard a quote. I was given a quote. It was, it all works out in the end. If it's not working out right now, that just means it's not the end.
Hmm.
And I think that settled with me. I was like, yeah, you know what?
Hmm.
We're not done. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So
That's
Well,
it.
that was awesome, man. Thank you very much, Sam, for being with us here today. I know your
Yeah.
story will be very much embraced by our audience. I think our audience is pretty good about listening to some of these stories. And then we were just talking before we got you on. We're like, man, there's something about having guests on that like it's just awesome to hear people talk and share their life's journey
That's right.
and the challenges. And yours, quite frankly, right now is just like, wow, man, that's a pretty amazing story. Even hearing it from him is just like
Yeah.
it's like great, you know. So
So super appreciative, Sam. Thank you. And just want to thank all our listeners too. You can find us at thehealthfeast.com, and we're at the Health Feast on Instagram and YouTube. And you can go to our website or one of our social media sites and submit a comment or a question for us. And yeah, thanks. We're super grateful for your time and presence here today, Sam.
thank you so much for having me. It's my absolute honor.
All right.
all
All
right.
right. Take care, everyone.